There's a very subtle difference between a lever that lets you lift more and a machine that does the lifting for you. One enhances your capability, the other takes it away in a very dangerous way. You stay the same or become weaker. I want to talk about a facet of the whole AI writing debate thing that I haven't seen discussed a ton. I'm sure other people have touched on this in various places, but I want to give my thoughts on this particular issue as it relates to AI writing and the use of AI in the writing process. What we're discussing today really comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding that a lot of the companies and people pushing these AI writing solutions have about writers. This has to do with what I am seeking out of the writing process, and something that AI on like a fundamental level is actually designed to take away. This misunderstanding is one of the reasons that I'm not really that interested in a lot of this AI stuff when it comes to fiction writing, at least. And I suspect a lot of other writers feel a similar way. I talk about the process of writing on this channel, not the product of writing. Those are two very different things that might seem the same to somebody who isn't deeply involved in this stuff. I've said before that this is a channel about writing, not a channel about publishing. I talk about the act of creating, writing, and engaging in the work that that act necessitates. Writing, in the context that I discuss it in at least, is a verb, not a noun. It is something that's ongoing. It is a state that you enter into and continue to enter into periodically until basically you can't do it anymore. Writing as a process is distinct from writing as a product. Now, AI generally is mainly focused on the product of writing, writing as a noun, not as a verb. AI-driven writing can, depending on how it's executed, eliminate the process of writing entirely, or at least eliminate elements of that process. We'll talk a bit about the differences between AI replacing versus fitting into parts of the writing process later on. I don't want to speak for every writer out there because I don't think what I'm about to say covers every single writer out there. But me personally, I don't write in order to create a product. At least that's not my main goal. I produce products out of writing, but that's not the main reason that I'm involved in writing. And I'll just to clarify really quickly, when I say product, I don't just mean like a commercial product or something that you can sell. I mean that I'm engaged in writing because of the journey to the end product, that process along the way. A finished story is not the main reason that I'm writing. AI seems to be very interested in the ashes left over at the end of writing. I'm not interested in the ashes, I'm interested in the fire that created them. That's where my focus is. So anything that lets you make ash without the fire just seems kind of silly to me, and I imagine it seems kind of silly to a lot of writers. One thing that I'm coming to appreciate more and more is that the reason to do something difficult is because of the difficulty. The difficulty, the struggle, the suffering, whatever, is the reason to do something. There is meaning in the difficulty that it takes to do something. Writing is something that is at times very difficult to do. The sheer amount of time that you need to commit to something big like a novel, the constant self-doubt, the overwhelming technical and complex nature of a big story. And there's the constant yawning gap between the vision that you have for your story and the skills that you possess to execute on it. If writing was easy, a lot more people would be cranking out novels rather than staring at TikTok for 19 hours a day or whatever the average screen time use is nowadays. I've heard that if you watch enough TikTok, you end up in this weird quantum state where your screen time can actually exceed 24 hours a day. Anyway, the difficulty associated with writing is worth it because you gain something from it. And what you gain from it doesn't have to do with the story that you complete as a result of the act of writing. When you write, when you go through that difficulty, you gain the ability to focus, the ability to work even when things are uncertain. You can break down procrastination and perfectionism. You learn that producing a crappy novel is better than not producing a novel. You learn that the path to good writing is littered with a ton of bad writing. When you engage in something difficult like writing, you increase your capability. You become capable of more things. You get stronger as a person. Now, I recognize that fiction writing is not on the same level of difficulty as like climbing Mount Everest or something like that, but it is still more difficult than sitting around on the couch staring at your phone. I would, though, be very cautious about painting writing as some kind of glorious crusade that only those with the hardiest of constitutions should attempt. I think it's very dangerous to let your ego build up around something like writing and the fact that it's so difficult and you're so great because you spend time doing it. I think that's a very difficult road, or is a very dangerous road to go down. The fact is, to make progress in writing, it really involves spending a lot of times doing things that aren't that glamorous and also just kind of simple and repetitive and sometimes kind of boring. There's a difference between complex and easy to do because it's complex and interesting, and something that is simple but exhausting and very time consuming to do. Writing 1,000 words isn't a complicated thing to do. Like, it's relatively simple. There aren't a lot of like nuances and tricks and stuff that you can do. It's straightforward but requires a ton of effort to do on a regular basis. It's the kind of simple but repetitive and time consuming stuff that will really sort of build up your skill. Which brings us back to the whole AI thing. Anytime an AI can do something for you, anytime it can make the process easier, you lose some capability. Anytime it takes away some of the drudgery or the boring, repetitive, tedious work that goes into improving at something like writing, you become weaker because your ability to endure that difficult work is lessened. And that's exactly the kind of work that all this AI stuff says that it will take away. That's where AI can become dangerous, when it starts doing the work for you instead of allowing you to do more work. There's a very subtle difference between a lever that lets you lift more and a machine that does the lifting for you. One enhances your capability, the other takes it away in a very dangerous way. If you want to write a book, having that book be done is not the main thing that you should want to get out of that process. Becoming the person who is capable of writing the book, that's the point. That's what leads to satisfaction. That's what allows you as a person to take on more things in your life. When you don't increase your capability, you don't build anything. There's no growth. You can't wake up tomorrow and do more than you did today. You're not building towards anything. Your energy is just kind of scattered. There's no change to you. You stay the same or become weaker. Trying to make life easier beyond a certain point will just make life harder, because being able to handle difficulty is always better than simply avoiding it, because difficulty has a way of finding you no matter how much you try to avoid it. Now, big caveat here, doing things the hard way just for the sake of doing something hard can become kind of silly if taken too far. Choosing to do something in a way that is so difficult and inefficient that your productivity, what you actually achieve, goes down so far to the point that you're not really doing anything productive, is not really a worthwhile endeavor. There is a time and a place for tools and things that do some work for you, for tools or technology or whatever else that make things easier. There is a place for that. But I don't know how much this really applies to writing a novel. Novels have always been a medium where a single person can basically achieve almost everything within that medium. It's like, sure, there's editors and beta readers, and sometimes there's multiple people who kind of work on a project, but 95% of the work that goes into a novel is usually done by one person. I just don't know that there's a ton of space for AI to increase the capabilities of a writer to allow them to do more without just actually reducing the workload and limiting the capabilities of that writer. Novels are one of these things that is kind of sandboxed enough and is a finite enough of a pursuit that technology and tools that can increase your capability, I just don't know where that happens. I don't know where that comes in the space. I don't know where there is room for innovation with how a novel is written that goes beyond something that any author could do on their own without AI. I could be totally wrong about that. I am open to refutations of that argument. That's just the way I see it. But I think it underlines this entire issue, which is that there isn't space in novel writing for AI to increase an author's capabilities. All there is space for is for the AI to do some of the work for that author, which ultimately makes that author or that writer a weaker writer. If you use AI in your process and you feel like it is stretching your capabilities and helping you do more, then I guess my argument is moot. I don't really see that happening though, and the entire selling point of all this AI stuff is you're buried under work. Let us automatically get it all done for you. All you need to do is write this prompt. I don't know about you, but that's not what I want to get out of my writing. The grind is part of the reason why I'm here. There's all kinds of other things in my life that I'm not interested in doing and will gladly let an AI take those things over, but writing isn't one of them. I'm engaged in writing because of what I get out of the process of writing, and any tool that does something to take that process away or makes it easier is just not really a benefit to me because it's taking away the actual benefit of the process. In effect, it's like these AI companies are going up to people who are hiking up the side of a mountain and offering to sell them a helicopter that'll take them to the top of the mountain. There's a time and a place for helicopters, but if you're hiking up the side of a mountain, the difficulty and the actual act of, hiking is kind of the point that most of those people are there. I wouldn't know because I usually try not to go outside, so I don't hike very much, but I imagine that's why people are hiking. Speaking of hiking, it's time for you to hike away from this video because we're at the end of this video. So there you have it. I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.